Love you, Linda. Love you.
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing "Oh Happy Day."
One word prayer. Justice, where are you?
And welcome to Justice Served TV. I'm Michael Bryant. Hello there, Linda Kenny Bodden.
Hi, Michael Bryant. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Here we are, still getting through the Karen Reed withdrawal symptoms, right?
Well, let me just tell you, let me tout this on Thursday night. We have quite a week coming back after tonight, after Tuesday. Wednesday night, we have the Sandra Birchmore case, a deep dive again into that. That'll be our second deep dive. Mizzy B is going to be on. As everyone knows, my husband is the one who broke the case. But we got some interesting things happening because it was announced yesterday that Farwell's hearing in federal court has been again and yet postponed to October. I wonder how that could be or why that is.
Might have some inside information on that, which will be very interesting. Everybody kind of thought that once the Karen Reed trial was over, that might kind of pick up speed, but I don't know. Maybe there's something happening behind the scenes.
I think it may be picking up speed in terms of something that maybe people should be shaking in their little booties by.
Yes.
And then on Thursday, we're not withdrawing from Karen Reed because not only the jurors speaking out, not only are the jurors, especially one juror, being attacked, right? But we're going to go through some of the people that brought us Karen Reed, the local community, and then the lawyers who've been on with regard to it, and the experts. And we're going to have what we're calling a Karen Reed Lollapalooza beginning at 6 p.m. on Thursday. So no withdrawal here from Justice Served TV.
Okay, well, we're trying to wean ourselves then. We're kind of cutting back on the dosages. Okay, so one thing we thought we would do, even though we haven't had a lot of time to dip our toe into the Sean P. Diddy Combs case, we figured this would be as good a time as any because prosecution has wound down, and now we're hearing not a whole lot's going to happen for the defense. So when I think of RICO, and I think of having to defend those interesting charges in the context of rap music, I could only think of one person, and that's Doug Weinstein. Doug, how are you, buddy?
I am doing great. Hi, Michael. Hi, Linda. Thank you for having me on.
Doug, thank you for coming on. We love you, and then our viewers love you. We all love you.
Thank you. I'm adorable. That's why.
You are.
Yes,
you are just
that
adorable.
Helps. That helps. So let's just talk basics about this. There's the three main charges, and again, it is federal. That's the reason nobody gets a looky-see in the courtroom, which is unfortunate. I do have a couple of pictures I'm going to show you, though, because I want to see if you can name some of the people from these sketches. And it's the Linda. Is it Rosenberg? Ms. Rosenberg, is that right? Who is the
Jane Rosenberg? Right, she's one of the sketch artists, one of the greatest.
Yeah, she's been crazy busy, as you might imagine. So I'm going to look at a couple of those in a sec. But I had to go back and get the indictment to kind of refresh recollection, since we have been so deep in the Karen Reed case. And if I were on the stand and somebody asked me if this helped refresh my recollection, I of course will say no, because then it kind of puts them in a box for at least a few minutes until they figure it out. Anyway, so the three charges include the racketeering charge, the RICO-based racketeering charge. Then you've got the sex trafficking charge by force, fraud, or coercion, and then you've got the transportation of prostitutes to engage in illegal activities. That's basically Mann Act, taking somebody across state lines for illegal purposes. So any of those that you like in terms of the prosecution's case?
Oh, I think the trafficking case, they've probably done a pretty good job of presenting evidence of that. As far as the use of coercion or force on that second count that you mentioned, I mean, I don't know. There's been almost every single witness that the prosecution has presented, even when they describe some of the things they've seen and some of the horrific things they've seen. On cross-examination, I've noticed...
Oh, excuse me, hold on a sec. I have to apologize for my phone. I've been boring people telling me I finally got my new phone, and you know how it's a process, right? So I put off switching over to my new phone until the Karen Reed trial was over, and now obviously I'm still having operator error. I apologize.
No.
Go ahead.
No worries. I didn't even hear it. So no, I think as far as the, I'm trying to remember where we were. Oh, but on the force or coercion issue, that I guess it's three main women are I guess the alleged victims here. They talk about the victim one and the victim two in the indictment, right? But they seem to present three, Mia, Jane, right, and then Cassie seem to be three main victims in the case. And the whole issue is that coercion issue, right, and force. And the prosecutor's allegations are, I guess, between the occasional physical violence that they have presented evidence of in the courtroom, perhaps the money that has flowed from Diddy or his organizations to the women, paying for apartments and et cetera, that somehow amounts to coercion. But then all the witnesses have testified, I think all of them, there may be one that hasn't, I haven't kept up with everything, but I think pretty much when all the witnesses have testified, when the defense on cross-examination has crossed them, most of them have said that the women have gone along willingly with a lot of this. So I think the defense, of course, I'm a little biased, but I think the defense attorneys have done a good job on cross of at least trying to sow some amount of reasonable doubt into the coercion aspects of it. And then on the main charge, or what I would call the main charge, the RICO charge, I think, and I was kind of judging it as the prosecution was going, but now that they're on their last witness, I mean, I don't think that they have shown a conspiracy by members of this organization to commit at least two predicate acts. I mean, that may be a little detailed, a little getting into the weeds, but that is what they need to show on the RICO conspiracy. They need to show that the enterprise, which is Diddy, along with his organization, his music companies, the employees, are the alleged enterprise here, that those members of the enterprise agreed to conspire to commit two predicate acts. I don't see it. Now, did they assist in some ways? Was there money being transferred from bank accounts? Were reservations being made? Sure. There were aspects of that. But, my secretary, when I had one, would make hotel reservations for me all the time. And, she didn't know what I might be doing in that hotel at those times. There's also the dog that didn't bark in this case a little bit, which I'd like to get to later.
So does that lead you to your Dave Chappelle?
Yeah, I was going to say, we really like to really talk to the top legal minds when we're looking into these cases. And so Dave Chappelle, of course, was the first person I thought of. And he's described the situation as this. He says, they got this guy on a RICO charge by himself. So at least from Dave Chappelle's perspective, anybody else part of the conspiracy is really not part of the conspiracy. And my overlay to that is, well, a lot of them seem to have been coerced. I'm not talking about having entered into sexual relations. That all seemed to be, again, consensual based on the defense perspective and their cross-examination. But you've got all these folks that, talk about being coerced into continuing whatever they were doing for Sean Combs. So my big question is, can you have a partner in a RICO case where that person is coerced into doing what they're doing?
When you say a partner in the RICO case, you mean members of the
enterprise?
Enterprise?
Yes.
Or coerced?
Yes.
That's a great question. I don't know that you really can. I mean, can you be coerced into being a co-conspirator? I don't think
that was my thought. Yeah.
No, I don't believe that you can. We didn't have that issue come up in YSL, but I don't believe that would count as willingly becoming conspiring with others if you're coerced into it. And the prosecution did present some witnesses who quit Diddy's organization, right? Who said, I left because I didn't want to participate in some of this. And I think that might be helpful to the prosecution's case. But, yes, I understand where Dave Chappelle is going, because there's only one defendant named in the indictment, right? So from
It's actually really funny because he leads into it, Doug, by saying, "Oh, they got Diddy. Diddy's in big trouble. He's in a conspiracy of one in a RICO charge," and it's funny when you listen to it.
Yeah, it was like Sean Combs conspiring with Puff Daddy, conspiring with Diddy.
That's right. Conspiring with Bad Boy Records or whatever the other one is. Yeah.
But honestly, I mean, if you get into the weeds and you read the indictment, as you have done, then you do see that they do name others in the indictment as alleged members of this enterprise. They just didn't name them as defendants. I mean, we had that in YSL all the time, where the state was trying to get in clear hearsay, and their argument to the judge constantly was, well, they're an unindicted co-conspirator, Your Honor. And so what you have is Bad Boy Records and all these other people as unindicted co-conspirators.
Let me ask you this. I have somebody that I always do a soundboard. She's in the community, and she's also in entertainment, and she is like she wouldn't find him guilty on this, and even with the violations of technically the Mann Act, these people went willingly. I mean, sex trafficking for people that are in the business of, her view is that these people are in the business. This is how they create their money. We should stop demonizing people that make money by selling for sex and calling it a crime and saying it was against their will. And then she asked this question, all right, and I'm going to throw this to you because what if you were making a pornographic movie? And I said, well, it's simulated. She said, come on, were you telling me pornographic movies are simulated? She says, well, what if you're making a pornographic movie? Why isn't that a violation every time you make a porno movie of RICO?
Well, every time you every time you fly an actor from California to Vegas, or Vegas to California, why aren't you committing some kind of Mann Act violation there? So those are good questions. I mean, this whole issue with sex work is a whole nother thing that I'm sure we could do a whole show on, which I think it's ridiculous that sex work is villainized and that it's illegal. It's just part of our old puritanical groundings in this country, and we need to move beyond that. But yeah, like the sex workers, what was one of them called? That one of them had a great name. I want to say.
It's not. Was it Jewel? Jewel was his first name, but he had.
No, there was another one who had a name he went by, like the Interceptor or something. It was a really good name. It sounded like a superhero. Although I believe they complained that he couldn't perform. But
that's bad for business if you're.
Oh, that's right. And then the agency said, "Wait a second, you're paying for his time, whether he can perform or not."
Yeah, they had this whole argument about this.
I don't know about that.
I mean, I don't know how much the jurors will look at this and say, look, you paid this guy who's an escort. You pay him $1,000. He flies to Florida. That's his job. He's not being coerced to do that. Maybe it's a technical violation, but are we really going to violate on that? The whole problem, I think, or a huge problem, first of all, I don't think they've shown the RICO, if I haven't made that already clear. But I think the big issue is they have shown Sean Combs to be a horrible human being. And you just wonder how much that's going to play into the process that the jury goes through when they're back in the jury room trying to decide what to do. Do they say, okay, look because I'm sure the defense is going to do a great job in the closing of showing that they have not shown a conspiracy, that they've not met the elements of RICO. But what happens when the jury gets back there and goes, oh, this Sean Combs is a terrible guy? Maybe they nail him on the other counts, but not the RICO. Maybe the government does a better job of tying this together in their closing than I've seen. But it's going to take some work on the government's part, I think, to show this RICO.
What about the fact that a lot of these, I'm sorry, Michael, go ahead.
I was just going to say, on this one point before we move on the Mann Act, that statute implies a victim of some sort, right?
Yeah.
So I would think on that front alone, you got a winner, because I don't think there's been any evidence that anybody's been a victim. They've been a hired gun, for lack of a better phrase. And if that's true, then, maybe there needs to be, I don't know the case law well enough. There must be some interpretation of that statute that suggests without a victim, you don't have a violation.
Well, I think the statute they would argue that the escorts are the
victims
here. And while people have recently liked to take my quotes out of context, so I have to be careful here with what I say. But, you could certainly make the argument that, again, sex work in some cases like this is a victimless crime. Not in all cases. So if you're clipping this out of context, not every time. I'm not talking about human trafficking. But when you have an adult man who has chosen to go in this work, I mean, is he, as you say, is he really a victim? But I think that doesn't really matter under the way that statute is written.
And what about the whole idea? I mean, when everyone comes out and talks about this, what they talk about is the idea of, well, these are these freak offs, right? They're disgusting, and you don't want to hear about them. And I have PTSD when I listen to them. And the jury, I'm sure, has not heard anything like this with regard to it. But there's also been everybody here. It's almost like an Oprah, episode in the sense of, you've got immunity, you've got immunity, you've got immunity, you've got immunity here. Do you think the jury, and what would you do as a defense attorney here in saying, look, they had to give everybody immunity for what their chosen profession and they wanted to participate in these freak offs. And while they may not be how you and I conduct our sex life or think that people should conduct our sex life, there's nothing illegal about it, except then I want you to carve out the whole Cassie assault for me.
Yeah.
And that's not a standalone.
Yeah. I'd like to think I would do the same thing you would do there, which is highlight that immunity. And that's what it took to get these people to testify. And then the other question, talk about giving all these people immunity. Where is Sean Combs' CEO, his chief of staff, I mean? Where is Christina? Is it Coram? I don't know how to pronounce her last name.
Missing in action.
Why hasn't the state presented her? They presented her text messages. Actually, her name kind of gets weaved in and out of this case throughout this trial, and it's certainly all over the documents. I mean, she is the one that I think, according to the government, I keep saying the state, according to the government, is the one that's really facilitating a lot of this. Right. At least since she came on board, I don't know when she's a 2012 graduate. She worked for a few years. I guess she's been with them since about 2015, maybe. So, or I don't know when. So why isn't she there? Why isn't she a witness? Because she's the one really that could shed the most light on what was going on. If there was a conspiracy involving these entities, she's integrally involved with all the entities. So where is she? I don't know where she is.
I mean, she's been called the chief of staff. I mean,
yeah.
That's bizarre in itself. But to Linda's point, 2016, the Cassie event that everybody knows about, that video, I don't care about all the freak off videos, which may be disgusting for the jurors to sit through. But that video is some powerful stuff.
That video is terrible. And you take that video and you couple it with him paying off all those folks in the hotel to not disclose it, signing it. Oh, that was actually something. It's a little side thing I noticed. So I believe it's the security guard. I may be wrong, that Diddy gave the $100,000 in cash to be quiet about the events and share it with two of his buddies. He had him sign an NDA. The NDA was not with Sean Combs. The NDA is with Sean Combs' company. And I think if I'm the government, I play that up to show the company's willing involvement in this conspiracy.
And that gives you the enterprise then with the company, because that's a different.
It helps with the enterprise. It helps with the conspiracy aspects of it. And again, it's hard to follow this trial only through Twitter. But assuming, and that's when I picked up on, but assuming there's other nuggets like that, maybe in closing, the government will be able to bring those nuggets together to show a conspiracy. I don't know. I really want to see the government's closing, because and of course I can't, but I guess I'll try to follow it best I can, but I'd really like to see how they get these co-conspirators buying in to committing at least 2 predicate acts.
I think the one thing that they were talking about that was most powerful was when supposedly Sean Combs was at the house of a rival for Cassie's affections, right?
Yeah.
Another, right. And his car gets firebombed or whatever. And the implication is that Sean Combs knew it was going to be firebombed and was there to watch because he wanted him to stay away from Cassie. So I thought that may have been the most powerful evidence that I thought that maybe could get them past the hurdle. I just not impressed by consenting adults who clearly said that, hey, look, including one of the alleged victims, who said, look, I just called him like 2 months ago. I wanted to come back to work for him and run his companies while he does prison time.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Very weird.
You know, except for the this is a big except for, but except for like the volume of all this sexual activity and the quantity of money that's exchanging hands and the largeness of it, I'm sure there are people that have been in messed up relationships that were not dissimilar to this, with, you know, maybe multiple people involved and love triangles or quadrangles or people with weird sexual quirks. The whole thing about this that seems a little different is it's bigger, but I wonder how many of the jurors will think, oh, I mean, this is just a messed up situation. These women were consenting to this. But then the other part of me thinks, well, people understand coercion to the extent of you being financially beholden to somebody else. And you are either because it's a relationship or because it's an employer. And you do things you would not ordinarily do, or do things you would not want to do because of that financial, I don't want to say control, but that financial dependency that you have on that individual. Again, I think it happens all the time on smaller scales. But now you've got a giant version of it. So I'm really curious where the jurors are going to come out on all of this.
Yeah, you know, a lot of it's not unlike the Epstein situation where he's taking advantage of those that need the money. They needed maybe attention. They were from a different background. Same kind of dynamic is seen here on a kind of a larger scale, larger than life scale.
Where I would distinguish.
I have one other question then for you, Doug.
Yeah, well, I would just distinguish Epstein in the context that a lot of those women were underage.
Of course.
From what I understand. And so,
and I think a lot of people thought that might be the case here.
Yeah, we haven't seen
before it really unfolded, and then there isn't any of that.
No, and you know, if there would have been any, they'd have brought it in.
Oh my God,
the resources they put here. But yeah, with Epstein, you know, if you're underage, you really can't consent. So these were consenting adults, and maybe they were coerced, financially coerced, dependent, whatever, consenting. And can you really be consent if you're? But so many relationships are like that. You know, I just. It's every day. I'm sorry, Linda. What was your question?
No, this is because of what you were saying about dependency. There's been a lot of discussion in this trial about drug dependency by both the women, by both the some of the sex workers, and Diddy apparently was on. They were on ketamine. They were like he was on like there were like lots of different drugs. I mean, I can't even name them all. There were so many drugs. Some I've never even heard of. Right? Yeah. Would he have had? Would you have considered? And I know the answer to this, but would you have considered putting that drug dependency in as some type of defense? And if he's completely out of it all the time, why isn't that like he's just with everybody else? They're all drug dependent, having these stupid parties, disgusting parties. How does the coercion of his money and his fame and his power feed into that? I guess is what I'm asking.
Essentially, his drug dependency being a defense of his actions.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't.
The drugs maybe do it.
Yeah, I don't think that would fly at all, right? And neither do you. I can tell from the question.
I don't, but I'm just wondering whether or not.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I guess we'll get to see because they're going to put on approximately 2 days of a defense case.
Yeah, interestingly, we now know that Combs is not going to testify. Not a shocker, but they're not calling any witnesses. So it's going to be what, 2 days of exhibit presentation?
I guess. I guess that's what their plan is. I don't really know. By the way, the caveat is that while I do actually share office space with Nicole Westmoreland, I have had zero discussion of this case with her. So nothing that I'm saying here has anything to do with anything that she has told me. We haven't discussed the case at all. My discussions with Nicole have been limited to, hey, you've got some mail. Do you want me to open it and scan it and send it to you because they're free report?
No, I can't imagine. I can't imagine going from YSL And I know with Brian Steele, there was a trial in between, right? From your trial for 2 years to the trial in between, YSL, the trial between, and then, picking up and doing a lot of the cross-examination on the Diddy witnesses. I mean, they must be like, I don't know, maybe they're taking some infusions. I have no idea because, I mean, super peoples.
Yeah. Well, I know Brian jumped into a big case down in Brunswick involving the prosecutor that was in the Ahmaud Arbery case.
Yes, which he won.
Which he won. He won, and he should have won. They screwed up the indictment of that case. And of course, Brian's great at finding that. You better dot your I's and cross your T's if you're up against Brian Steele. So, but he jumped into that about a month after the YSL trial ended and about 2 months after his client pled out. So that was really something. And of course, Nicole Westmoreland, like everybody else in YSL, she's been nonstop. She's been trying cases left and right until this came along. And Bruce Harvey and Keith Adams has had about a half a dozen trials. It's nonstop for everybody since then.
Wow.
But Nicole's done a great job. She's done a great job. I love the cross that she did on the friend of Cassie's. She did a really great cross discrediting that friend's timeline of when this was the dangling over the balcony allegation. And Nicole did a great cross of that. And I believe it was so good that the defense attorneys asked for a mistrial, alleging that the prosecutors knew that they were basically putting on perjured testimony.
Wow. Another case that's been
yet another case. Yeah.
The judge denied it, but did you see his quote, which was really quite complimentary to Miss Westmoreland? He says, "Well, we're just going to let you have that Perry Mason moment. You can argue with the jury."
Yeah, he wasn't even there. He was in New York City, and so you have this you have Relly with that allegedly with perjured testimony.
Yeah.
You have alleged perjured testimony in this case, and then of course you have the case that we just talked about, where perjury came up a couple of times, the Karen Reed case.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be something seems to be bandied around quite a lot these days by defense attorneys talking about prosecution witnesses.
Jury got 100% right in Karen Reed, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. We should ask you about that. Because
No, I'm just saying that's exactly what I thought should happen. Again, I have no idea whether she did it or not, and I don't care.
Nope,
but the jury made the right decision.
Don't know what the hell happened. And every juror that we've heard from followed that line of thinking. They didn't feel compelled to fill in the blanks, which is what they should do. Hey, let me get your take on this. I got a couple of versions of this. This is the first one. There's the first picture. Tough to tell who it might be from the back. I wonder who that is.
I'm going to guess that's Brian there.
I've got another one that I think is a little better. That was from some recent testimony. Actually, it was the recent viewing of a lot of the freak-off videos. And so they did it with headphones. Yeah. So that it wasn't being played like you're walking into a XXX theater. You walk into the courtroom to hear those kinds of sounds. Let me see if I can find that one. It's a much better version of Ms. Rosenberg's process, because she is amazing. She does all of these. There you go. So there's the team.
I'm waiting for it to come up. Okay.
You see it there?
Okay.
Trump Hotel.
I can't. I don't know who is that. Who is that on the right?
On the far, that's a woman of some sort.
That's not supposed to be Nicole.
I don't know. Her hair looks different.
I don't know.
But then Brian would be in the middle, but on the far left. But spatially, he's in the middle, and then Mr. Combs nearest the camera on the far left.
Okay, I can kind of see it.
Yeah. So, and they've got, when Rosenberg does these, Mrs. Rosenberg does these, she has little things on the screens.
Right? Yeah. Right.
Oh yeah. See that Trump Hotel January?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Trump Hotel. Yeah, that's good. She puts a lot of the like the attitude and the emotion into the figures that she draws.
Did you heard the story how she's sitting there doing her thing, front row, right? And I heard that that she's not really allowed to draw in court, which is different than some courts we've seen her work in. In the Daniel Penny case, she's right there, like front and center, and she's doing her thing. But they make her go elsewhere to actually do the artwork. That's what I've heard. And so Mr. Combs saw her one day and approached her and said, "You soften it up. You're making me look like a koala." Now, I have no idea what that means. I'm not even sure. Is that a bad thing?
I think it'd be good to make him look cuddly like that.
I would like to look at it like
I want all of my defendants to look like cuddly koalas.
Yeah, so I have no idea.
That's a great photograph, a great picture. That's a great drawing. The last one of Brian Steele. It's a great. I think that has to be Nicole Westmoreland because they're talking about when Combs was at the New York hotel, and she picks the Trump hotel, which you can't, and then I thought Combs looked a lot better than he did in the prior picture.
I found another good sketch that she did of Nicole doing the cross. That really, I thought it looked a lot like it. I actually sent it to Nicole.
Yeah, nice.
She did not respond.
Good. Very good. Yeah, that's a nice little memento of some court work, right?
Would be. I know because I'm in the same offices as Bruce Harvey. He has several of his sketch work up on the walls from his trials. So that would be nice. It's too bad we didn't get any of that in YSL, but that's okay.
Yeah, that damn TV camera stuff kind of obviates the need for the artwork, which is that's still old school throwback stuff that the federal court clings to. I don't know how much longer, but
I don't see it changing.
I don't see it changing either. My husband has a lot of that artwork too, Michael, and he loves it. I mean, you have to go. Actually, you purchase it from the artist, or they'll give it to you depending on the situation. Because you want to support want to support the artist no matter what. And it really is interesting to see because when you look back at it, you say, in a way, it's a moment in time that you see on a wall. So you don't have to go back looking for the video. You don't have to back, and I think it's wonderful. I think that you'll see Brian Steele, no matter what happens on this case, he's going to love that one right there. That's just fabulous.
I know I have some YSL fan art of the YSL trial that people sent me. Some it's quite good. Actually, I'm going to put some in on my wall when I
love it.
Actually move into my office. Yeah.
Oh, and do you still have that trial going on in August?
I do.
Still on the books for August 9th, I think it is.
Yeah, still on the books for then. So you'll see me hot and sweaty in Hinesville, Georgia.
Hopefully somebody's going to be broadcasting it so we can see it.
Yeah,
we'll see. At least clips will be.
I'm sure the local folk will definitely have it. Hinesville, Georgia, just sounds hot. It just sounds hot.
Yeah,
just very steamy.
Great German restaurant there.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Find yourself in Hinesville.
You never know. You just never know what might be happening. Yes. Every time I think about the travel, I think about being in Fulton County for your trial. And, of course, Yak Gotti, Diamante Kendrick's mom, who I continue to wait. Hello? No, I keep waiting for her to give us a call here. Just remind her next time you see her. She promised. No.
I probably talk to her on the phone 2 to 3 times a week. I just have to remember to mention it, and I will do my. I have a terrible memory. I will do my best to remember to ask.
I'm
her.
Bugging her through you, so that's
and let me plug Diamante's music, Yak Gotti's music.
Yes.
I heard some of it the other day.
He dropped his first. I call it a single. I don't know what the right word is. About 9 or 10 days ago. Called 30 Days Out. So everyone should find it on Apple Music, Spotify, or YouTube. And there's more to come.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. It sounded great. It sounded like he had a little story to tell there.
He does.
It was good.
Hopefully he'll tell the story about his great attorney,
I think he does a shout out to me in the first line. So
I want to it, Linda. I want a whole story. I want
There's a lot of inside information in it, I think.
In there, okay. I would also, I want a story. I want you and I want you guys to star in a movie. Quite frankly,
there we go.
I mean, someone to play.
There we go. Diamante and everyone else just has to waive privilege for the good stuff to come out.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Young Thug had his first performance Sunday night since he got out. I believe he said it had been. I don't even remember what the number was since he performed. A huge number of days. Since I want to say, 1,400 days. He announced it. And what song did he start with? Take It to Trial.
Take it to trial. Take it to trial.
That's great. That is great. I mean, you did such a fabulous job, and we're just so fortunate to have come to know you through that trial and to see your work. And I'm convinced that you guys really, guys and girls and gals, I'm not using this in a sexist way. I mean, obviously, because I'm a female lawyer. That whole trip for 2 years really showed the public what really goes on behind the scenes when the government wants to target you, and you came out the other side with them loving defense lawyers, especially you. And I think that's just most remarkable job that you've done, not just for your client, but for the rest of us and for the system.
Yeah, I think that televising that trial did a good job of showing the injustices that are sometimes performed when there's no camera there.
Yeah, I think it was eye-opening, and then on the heels of that, the Karen Reed case unfolds for people, and in between the two, ASAP Rocky.
Yeah,
that's a trifecta of just government intrusion and overreach that is people saw it. It played out for them in real time. So
yeah, and you had inept investigation in YSL of at least of the Donovan Thomas issue, death, and then you had the inept investigation, I think, or at least incomplete. But you could say inept investigation in Karen Reed. So I'm sure y'all will get to that. I'm going to watch your show when you have your Karen Reed-a-palooza, because I want to see what everyone has to say about it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
It should be fun.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, thanks, man. We always appreciate, we are trying to get better at giving you more notice, but sometimes it's shorter than I would like, but I appreciate
honestly, with my crazy schedule between juggling civil and criminal calendars, little notice is often when I have the best idea of when I'll have availability. So it's always fine. I always love coming on y'all's show. Linda and Michael, thank you for having me on.
Hey, thank you, sir. And who knows? Might see you, not too far off future. I don't know. I'll get some.
Hinesville, Georgia. Here we come.
Yeah, Hinesville. Yeah.
Come on down and visit.
All right. Take care, man.
Bye.
See you guys. Bye.
All right. Always a pleasure. Always interesting insight. And like I said, when I think RICO and rap, how can you not think of Mr. Weinstein? So
First thing, and he's so gracious, and he knows the law, and he's got great insights into the system. Just a classic example that he's a great lawyer, right?
Yeah.
And he's got great credibility, and he's got great style. And don't you just want to believe everything he says all the time and listen to him more? Because I do believe everything he says all the time.
Yeah.
I want to listen to him.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a pompous guy that says things to hear himself say these things. He's giving you honest react, and if he's a little unsure about something or how it might play out, he's honest about it. Like in these cases, YSL versus Sean Combs, so different, other than the RICO attempt as a way to capture his alleged criminal activity. The factual analysis is totally couldn't be more different. But it tells you a little something about RICO, and I've talked before about how I appreciate the creativity. It blew up in the faces of Fonnie Willis and Fulton County in Georgia. Still, just to determine whether that's going to happen in the federal case now underway against Mr. Combs. Just for scheduling purposes, we believe that closings could be Thursday. Again, because the defense has said, we're not going to call any witnesses. I'm curious to see how that plays out into 2 days, but okay. That's what they say. So that pushes it to about Thursday-ish. I'm going to try and get down there. I always complain about media outlets who kind of parachute in at the end.
Right.
And I'll be parachuting in at the end. Maybe not. But we were kind of busy with other stuff.
We've been a little busy, and we do have our Lollapalooza Thursday night too.
Okay.
We'll be parachuting at the end. It was initially expected to go more. It was expected to go to the middle of July.
Yeah.
Remember P. Diddy. And so we thought that we'd have this ending, Karen Reed ending, and we'd have time to get into P. Diddy. But I think that we made a decision to bring you Karen Reed, and I think our viewers are very happy with that.
Yeah, and I think it could not have worked out better for all involved, the supporters, most of the attorneys. There were a couple that not so happy, which we'll get into at another time. Anyway, before we go, talking about somebody who's been in the Diddy courtroom from the beginning. She's done some amazing reporting for CBS, for CNN, and I had a chance to talk to Terri Austin, who also happens to be a law and crime alum. So, she's going to give us some insights. Let's take a look at that. So, Terri Austin, how are you? It's so good to see you.
It's great to see you too, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Of course, obviously we have our law and crime roots as alums there. The other day on the show, we had Bob Bianchi. So if you had been on there, and Brian, I think that would have been, well, everybody but Jesse. We had we had most of the staff on it at one time.
That
And the
would have
thing is, of course, most people know we never were on together, right? Almost never.
That's true. That's true. It was a pleasure when I got to be on with you.
It was always fun, always fun. So let's have some fun at Mr. Sean Combs' expense. So you've been there in the courtroom. We're winding it down. Where are we?
Wow. So I've been in the courtroom every single day for both the jury selection and for the witnesses that have testified. And it has been a long journey, over 30 witnesses. It's been 5 or 6 weeks now. And the prosecution rested today, and the defense started their case and rested today. The prosecution is trying to show multiple charges. They're trying to show that RICO, the sex trafficking, and the transportation to engage in prostitution. So all of their witnesses have been supporting those charges. They brought in the 3 victims, the Jane, the Mia, those are victims who testified under pseudonyms, and Cassie Ventura, who was the first victim to testify. But they've also had personal assistants. They've had security guards. So they've had a number of people who have testified to try to say that there is this conspiracy. But it's interesting because I think their strongest charge right now is the transportation to engage in prostitution, because they have shown that. They've shown that Sean Combs, along with these individuals, particularly Cassie and Jane, have been engaging in prostitution with these escorts. They didn't call it prostitution, but they've been paying these escorts, taking them on vacations, some international, Turks and Caicos, Bahamas, certainly Miami, Florida, California. So that has been established. They've been paying for it. He's either paid directly, or either Cassie or Jane has paid directly. But so far, that I think is their strongest claim through their witnesses and through the documents. They have tons of emails and texts between all of the individuals involved. And I think that's a pretty strong case. The sex trafficking is not as strong. And I think the reason is, obviously you have to show force, fraud, or coercion. And I think for Cassie, I don't know if you remember that video that came out, the March 5th, 2016 video.
Sure.
That was right after one of the hotel nights, is what they call it, freak-offs.
Yeah.
One of
King's Night, is that another thing they call it?
King's Night is another word that they call it. And so they basically show Cassie coming out, going to the elevator, and then they show, as you probably know, because you've probably seen it, Sean Combs coming down the hallway with the towel on, and he yanks her back and he pulls her hair and he kicks her while she's down. It's a very damaging video for that jury to see, and they saw it over and over. So if you're looking for that force, there's the force right there for the sex trafficking. And I think it's very clear, even if it's only one time, I think it's very clear that they could come back with a conviction on the sex trafficking as it relates to Cassie. Jane, not so much. There were a lot of texts and emails and calls where she is ready, willing, and able. She could have left at any time. There is one incident where she claims there was force, but she didn't come across as very credible, honestly. And so she didn't come across as someone who was a victim. She got a lot of benefits out of it. All the time she's talking about, well, what am I going to get? How come you're giving all these other women, bags and purses? And why aren't we traveling? So she comes across as someone who's looking for a benefit. And I think it might be a little bit harder to show force, fraud, or coercion where she's concerned. And that RICO claim, it's funny because Shapiro argued Rule 29 today, where she was asking the judge to acquit Combs on all the counts. Right. And when you listen to what she was saying, it really was a pretty strong case where she is laying out there's no conspiracy there. He did
conspiracy of one.
Correct. So even his right hand person, Christina Quorum, she sort of like ran everything for him. She was the chief of staff. She didn't even know what was really going on. Yes, you have people who were involved in setting up the rooms and buying the famous, baby oil that you've heard about, but they weren't involved. He kept that from them. This was all him. And the only enterprise they really showed were enterprises who were doing real business. The cross examinations were excellent, Michael. I got to tell you, he's got the Bad Boy Records, he's got the Sean John clothing line, he's got alcohol lines, liquor lines, and he is doing really well, and he's well regarded. I think I mentioned the witnesses. It was mostly personal assistants. I'm not sure if they actually had a security person, but they had a lot of people come up on the stand. All of them were very impressed and respected Sean Combs. I did not expect to hear that. And I also didn't expect to hear businesses that were so well run. One of the first, I think it was George Kaplan, one of the first personal assistants who came to testify, talked about the interview process and how he had multiple interviews and had to talk to this one and that one. He had to come back. He had a test. He had to do a sample, schedule where he'd have to figure everything out for Sean Combs and which hotel would he go to, what car services would he get. He had to set up this fake trip. And it was a test to see if he could really do it, because that would be one of the functions of the personal assistant. So he really was running. I mean, in fact, his chief financial officer, I think, was Harvard. I mean, he didn't mess around. And the other thing,
So was Sean, Mr. Combs, was he hands-on with these businesses, or did he have like lieutenants that did most of the work?
I would say both. Say both. They showed the organizational chart, and he had a full staff of people who were, engaging in all of the businesses and doing the work, but he led them. He basically had the creative edge and told them what his vision was, and he let them run the operation, but he was the brains behind it, and he worked really hard. That's the other thing everybody said. It wasn't just him telling everybody to do. For RICO, you have to have 2 predicate acts, and one of the predicate acts was, forced labor. And so many of the witnesses on cross-examination said, well, yes, I worked 24/7, but so did he. And they respected him, and he motivated them. And even the people that all the people the prosecution called, because the defense didn't call anybody, but they all said how much they learned from him and how much they respect and admired him.
Yeah. And on that RICO charge, it seems to me you have to have people that benefited from these acts, and they were all basically employees. So I guess there was a benefit of sorts, but not hey, we made $100,000 on this deal and here's your cut. Not that kind of benefit.
As a matter of fact,
that could be a problem for the government.
Yeah, absolutely. He didn't pay very well, actually. I think these personal assistants who basically worked 24/7. I mean, Michael, imagine this. You have to be at his home when he wakes up. You have to get his breakfast together or get the chef to make the breakfast. You have to lay out everything he's going to need for that day. You have his schedule for that day. He basically moves through the day.
That sounds like my normal day, Terry. That's I don't know what's so weird about that.
Exactly.
Hey, let me ask you this, because it sounds like from your observations, at least the Mann Act, which is the transporting of individuals across state lines for illegal purposes, the prostitution is the linchpin there. Sounds like that may be the most likely. I think that this is an aside, but the Mann Act itself it's not really designed to protect sex workers, who these people were and maybe still are. That's not what it was for. It was for, generally, quote, victims of that kind of illegal activity. But that's not the way the statute is defining it. That activity that he's alleged to have carried out falls within the Mann Act.
That's exactly right. And you must have been listening today during Shapiro's argument. She's for the defense. She was the one who argued the Rule 29 motion. And she basically said the Mann Act was not designed for this. The Mann Act was designed for, sex workers, basically, not like prostitutes, but for, lay people who were taken advantage of, young people, not
Victims, some sort of victim.
correct, correct. And she went through all the cases that, where they were found, guilty of sort of the Mann Act, and none of them fit this scenario, is what she was saying. And she was, giving some of the citations. And I actually do want to go back and look at those citations. But that's exactly what she argued, that it wasn't really designed for this, and that these were consenting adults, even the escorts. And, that if that's what Cassie and Sean Combs wanted to do, or if that's what Jane and Sean Combs wanted to do, they have every right to do that. Now, it's an entertainment business. No one from the entertainment business was called. Actually, there were a couple of escorts, but I mean, the owners or the managers of the business, they weren't called. But there were a couple of escorts who basically testified, yeah, I went and this is what we did. This is what he wanted us to do. This is how we did it. And Michael, when I tell you it was explicit, it was explicit.
I wanted to ask if I know that from what I understand, they put headphones on those who were actually watching these videos, and they went by their own little screens, right, to the jury. Were you seeing those? Were they displayed to the gallery or the press?
No. And the reason they didn't do it, first of all, the judge did not want to have such explicit, sex in the courtroom and to have us reporting on it. But the other thing, as related to Jane, most of the testimony and documents for Jane, because she did go in as a pseudonym, was not shown. So a lot of times, even when they had summary charts talking about Jane, we could not see the summary chart in the overflow or in the courtroom. And for the videos, they definitely showed those just to the parties and to the jury and obviously the judge. And they had the headsets on. If you see some of the drawings by the court artists, some of them have with the headset.
Yes, a lot of them do. We were looking at it because Brian Steele, of course, worked with Doug in the YSL case.
Correct.
So he has that connection. And I threw up one of those graphics, so the Rosenberg, right?
Jane Rosenberg.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I said, where is he? Pick him out here. Everybody had the headphones on. So, yeah.
Correct. And the screens, when they are showing the videos and the parties, because, as we're in the gallery, obviously, and as we face the court, we're looking at the backs of the attorneys. So their screens are facing us. But we couldn't see it because they put these covers on the screen where they can see it, but we cannot.
Right. So there's no peripheral type vision over it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the jury. They have the headsets, and then they have the screens where we can't see it. So we sat through multiple videos where we couldn't hear or see anything. And, one thing, Michael, that I thought was really interesting is the defense played those videos again. And we did see the March 5th, 2016 video where Sean Combs sort of dragged.
Right. That one
Cassie.
Clearly the most damning.
It was, but you'd be surprised. The defense, Tinny Garagos, who was the one who was putting that video in with one of the witnesses, she went over the video again. It was the person who did the compilation of the video, and she played it over and over. I thought she did an excellent job overall, but honestly, I would not have played the sex videos. I would not have played particularly that video. That video we saw, but that video shows the force. The sex videos, I think the reason they were showing that is they wanted to show the consent.
Yeah, they're trying to normalize it. This is just consenting adults, may not be your cup of tea, but here it is.
That's right.
What were the jurors' faces? Can you pick up anything from them as they're watching this?
They were all quite stoic. There were a few reporters who said they saw there's an older Black woman on the jury, and they said they saw her go like that once. I didn't see that, but I will tell you that I was shocked at how calm, cool, and collected they were. They were just like, yeah,
they had to prepare themselves for
take it on, and they just looked. But they didn't seem fazed. They really did not seem fazed by it. Maybe it worked. Maybe what the defense did was to make them, sort of immune to it. And okay, so this is what you do. This is not what I do, but this is what consenting adults do.
I think, and we talked about this a little earlier, I've mentioned it a couple of times, that this case, maybe more than many others, the makeup of those jurors, 6 jurors, and their personal experience with sex is going to be so important in this case, because there will be some that say, "Well, what's the big deal?" And
Right,
others will be like,
right, right. Well,
eh,
there are 12
can you get
jurors.
a read on those people?
Yeah, there are 12 of them and 6 alternates. So
Oh,
now
okay.
we're down from 18 actually to 17 because juror number 6, there was a problem with his residency. And initially he had said he was in the Bronx, and then he just happened to make a comment to one of the court officers about, his commute from New Jersey. And so that brought up other questions, and the judge had 2 separate voir dires again with this particular juror. And the judge said, you know what, this is why we have alternates. I think he may be trying to, put himself on this jury and stay on this jury. And so he took him off. So we're down from, 18 to 17. Obviously, the 12 are going to make the decision, but it's a mixed jury. There are still a number of people of color, and it's mixed male, female. So I think it's one of the more diverse juries that we've seen. As a matter of fact, when the jury had been selected, the defense made a motion saying that the prosecution was intentionally trying to take off Black jurors, but the prosecution, Maureen Comey is the lead prosecutor. She got right up and she was like, nope, we took this one off for this reason. We took that one off for that reason.
So there was an official Batson challenge then?
That's exactly right. There was an official Batson challenge, and she was ready for it. I didn't even see it coming because the jury was so diverse. So I didn't expect the defense to make a Batson challenge, but they did. And when they did, I have to say, I definitely think Maureen Comey is an incredible prosecutor. She is Comey's daughter, the Comey.
Yeah, there are a lot of very familiar names at the council table. The other, you mentioned Garrigus. Is she Mark's daughter?
Yes, she's Mark's
Okay, that's
daughter.
what I thought. Mark Garrigus, most folks know from, you name it, Winona Ryder, et cetera, et cetera. So that's interesting. And she's done a good job, you think?
She's done an excellent job. She did the opening, and she's done a number of the cross examinations, and I think she's just been superb. I question sometimes why they go over and over these emails and texts when they're just establishing the same theme. The theme is, okay, we understand. Cassie and Jane consented to all of this. I mean, how many emails do we need to say, oh my gosh, it was so wonderful when I saw you the other night. I'm paraphrasing because some of it was very explicit. And, when you did that to me, I mean, over and over. I mean, look, we get it. But I think
you know how it is if you're an attorney deep into a case. You don't want to feel like you've left something behind. You're a little curious. Are they getting it yet? Am I? So last thing you want to do is you're done, and then you start thinking, man, what about that other blah blah blah?
They won't have that problem, Michael. He had it win.
So I have to full disclosure here. I screwed up on the jury. I always think when a federal case is involved, I always think 6 people for a federal case, and I probably have talked about that. So I apologize. I got that wrong, folks.
No worries.
Luckily, Terri is here to keep me honest.
Yeah.
So back to the I'm trying to figure out these jurors to get in their heads because I know it's going to be so important when they deliberate. Anybody wear clothing or have mannerisms that would make you think they're more free-spirited or more conservative?
I have to tell you, they are pretty straight-laced, these people, and they don't give away what they're thinking. I mean, if you want to know the summary of the jury, nearly all of them have college degrees. 2 of them have masters. 1 has a PhD. 9 of them are single. 3 of them are engaged. 6 of them have children. And they look at mainstream outlets for the most part, like the New York Times and CNN. And they're into all kinds of music, and several of them are into hip hop, and several of them actually were into classical. They dress fairly, I would say, conservatively. One alternate sort of always wears a hoodie, but you can't wear hats, so he wears it down. So he's probably one of the more casual dressers. And the rest of them are wearing not suits, but like khaki pants. They'll wear jeans, but a collared shirt. And I think they are taking this very, very seriously.
Yeah, we think,
And
yeah.
they're
What's
no,
the alt? What's the alt process? They just have they identified them? Does anybody know who's an alternate yet?
yes, the back row is alternate. So when you're facing the jury, they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
But it was strange, Michael. I thought that they would take alternate 1 and put that person in seat 6.
Okay.
But follow me here. That's not what they did. So seat 6 was removed. And so the juror, I think it's number 75 from his original numbers, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to look at the list. They took him and moved him to seat 6, and they moved everybody else down. So the alternate is actually sitting in seat 12 because they just slid everybody down.
Wow.
So
Okay.
now they have their original juror numbers, but their seat numbers have changed.
Right.
Which
And so
is, yeah,
and the 5 that are left as alts know they're alts, know that unless something comes along, they're not going to be taking part, which is unfortunate. I think a lot of courts, state courts especially, don't tell them.
that's right.
Let them be invested. Let them be pissed off when they don't make it onto the 12.
Yeah.
But keep them engaged, because I'm telling you, and they do the alternates in order. I'm guessing they took the first alternate, put that means if you're the number 6 alternate, what are the chances you're ever going to see this case? And I just think that's not the best way to do it. I could keep you all day, but I'm not. I'm going to let you go. I know you're busy. Folks should check her out on CNN, CBS, MSNBC. She is everywhere because she's been in that courtroom every single day. And if I happen to sneak down there and do what I've accused others of doing, parachuting in on the last day, I'm sorry. I've been handling this. We've been doing the Karen Reed thing, and I'll throw your name around. I'm sure that'll get me some extra credit.
Yeah, I actually just did a documentary with CBS, which they said is going to come out on the day of the verdict. So we'll see what happens with that. So that'll be interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, always appreciate it, Terri. You're one of the best. Miss our days at Law and Crime.
I do too.
But I'm glad to see you're so busy out there and doing a great job. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
So, we've switched through the time portal here. Hold on, I can't do this. I can't do this. There we go. So, Terri Austin, obviously front and center for this Diddy trial, and she will be as the trial continues and comes to a conclusion this week. Could be Thursday when the jury gets the case. I don't know. This could be a long deliberation. What do you think?
I think this is going to be longer than that we've seen, because I just think the RICO just makes it longer, right? They have to read those jury charges. Then you have all the sex trafficking counts and the process. Well, it's one sex trafficking count, but it's got all these sub acts in it. And I think there's going to be some heated discussions in that jury room.
Yeah, I meant to ask this of Doug, but I forgot. So I'll ask you. This to me seems to be a case that more than many is going to hinge, to pivot on people's personal perspectives on sex workers working. You know what I mean? That if you have somebody that's more straight-laced, they're going to be reactive in a far different way than somebody who's had a more broad sexual experience. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with you. And we're going to have to see the verdict form, too, of how this is broken down. If the count is just for Cassie and the assault and the alleged arson for, a competing lover for Cassie and the buying that off, that may be easier. But I think that you're right. I think this is going to hinge on people saying, well, wait a second, this was consensual. Look at some of the victims that they go back and work for him to run his business. And so I think you're going to have a lot more trading off here than we're normally seeing, Michael. That would be my view.
And again, only 6 jurors. So the infighting could be very personal, just like that.
Yeah, that's Tubi.
Tubi is not happy with this kind of evidence.
Yeah, no. Absolutely. So we'll see. I don't expect a verdict this week in that case. That's for sure.
Yeah. So we shall see. Anyway, always good to get insight from folks in the courthouse and a guy who's been through the drill, Doug Weinstein, with the YSL RICO overlay. Yeah. All right, partner.
We have a couple things on before I go. Tomorrow night, we are doing a deep dive, and Tubi the Poodle is very, very active right now.
Very agitated.
Deep dive. He's agitated. A deep dive into the Sandra Birchmore case, our second deep dive into it. We'll have Mizzy B on It was announced, as I told you at the beginning of the show, Matthew Farwell, who's been indicted federally for her murder of a witness in the federal investigation. His hearing that was set for July 1st has been moved to October. From, it started last October, kept getting moved and moved. That has implications, and you all know what I'm talking about. We'll talk about
and of
that.
course, the most recent wrinkle in that was, oh, by the way, the baby was not yours.
Right. I mean, so I think that makes it worse. We'll talk about that tomorrow night. I think that,
Yeah.
he killed it for no reason. It makes it even worse as far as I'm concerned. Just horrible, horrible situation. And then, of course, Thursday, we're going to have our Karen Reed Lollapalooza. We're going to bring people in that started this when no one was there. Our Jason Grant told us he was carrying a sign last November, the only one. Every weekend he would go down to the Registry of Deeds and carry that sign. There you go. Tubi's making a guest appearance here.
He's
All
coming
right,
in.
Tubi the Poodle. And all. So we'll hear from them, and we'll bring you right up through that. That whole process. We're going to do it again because I think it's worth discussing, including the statement and that was released today from Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan. We'll have more in depth on that than we've had in our show with Mike Easter.
Very good. So that's all to come. In the meantime, I'm Michael Bryant. Try to do the right thing.
And I'm Linda Kenny Bodden. Please hit subscribe, share, like, and notify. We're Justice Served TV.